Incredible moment. Single dad struggle with milk for his child revealed heartwarming act by neighbors. Chris's hands trembled as he stood in front of the grocery aisle. The last carton of milk was just out of reach, a tall reminder of everything that felt suddenly out of grasp. Ellie's favorite breakfast was on the line, and she was counting on him. The 5-year-old's laughter, the sparkle in her eyes as she gurgled more milk, please felt like a promise he was increasingly struggling to keep. With every step he took toward that carton, the burden of being a single dad weighed heavier on his chest. As he stood there, the chatter of a busy grocery store faded into a dull hum. Chris fought against the mounting fear that had become an unwelcome companion in the past few days. A sudden wave of layoffs at the factory where he clocked in from dawn till dusk hung over him like a dark cloud. Imagining life without a steady paycheck felt suffocating. How could he pay rent and feed Ellie, let alone keep the heat on when winter closed in? These were not just numbers on paper. They were tangible threats to the small world he had built for them, a world filled with crayons, giggles, and bedtime stories. They lived in a modest house in a bustling Midwestern town, where neighbors waved and children played in the streets. Chris had dedicated so much of himself to Ellie, pouring every ounce of love into her that he could muster. Yet, he found himself staring at the ceiling every night, the cold reality of balancing bills and being the magic in his daughter's life pressing down hard. Wouldn't a little more milk make her morning that much sweeter? It shouldn't have been something so complicated. Days passed, and the whispers of concern drifted through the neighborhood, filling the air with a warmth only communities know. Neighbors, once friendly faces passing by, began to shelter Chris under their wings. It started with a casserole at his front door, then a surprise delivery of groceries. He'd find envelopes tucked into his mailbox with cash and kind notes, where simple acts of kindness unfolded to create safety nets catching him as he stumbled through his struggle. Yet, pride held him back. How could he, the strong provider, accept help from those who had always looked to him for strength? Amidst this turmoil, Mr. Jenkins, a retired veteran whose laughter echoed through the block, began to sit with Chris on the porch, sharing stories of resilience. With each cup of coffee, Chris pulled a little closer to understanding that accepting kindness didn't signify weakness. Instead, it stitched together a fabric of community he had always been a part of. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. It was the night of the community fundraiser, where old faces turned into allies as Chris stood before his neighbors, heart pounding, ready to speak about the dignity of hard work and the resilience that defines them all. As he leaned into the microphone, anxiety raced through him, but there was a flicker of hope too. Would he speak from the heart and admit what he feared? The room held its breath, a collective emotion swirling in anticipation. A determined spirit surged through him as he prepared to share his journey, knowing full well that the truth of his loneliness and pride might finally set him free or lead him to a decision that could change everything. Chris cleared his throat. The microphone stood cold in his grip, intimidating yet strangely familiar. He scanned the room, catching the eyes of neighbors he had grown to lean on, those who had helped lift him up during these hard days. Faces were stitched with worry and warmth, each whispering a silent encouragement that urged him on. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice breaking slightly. "I honestly don't know where I'd be without you." Deep breaths. He fought the tightening of his chest. "I've been struggling to keep things afloat, and it's hard to admit that. I always thought I had to do everything on my own, but that's not how life works." The room shifted. A few heads nodded, and he could see understanding in their gazes. This was a group of people who gathered at all sorts of events together: the neighborhood picnics, the local baseball games, and the holiday celebrations. They had witnessed the laughter of children running around, but they had also seen the shadows of worry linger in Chris's eyes. "I lost my job at the factory," he said, bracing against the flood of vulnerability he was letting spill. "Ellie, she deserves the best I can give her. I never want her to feel that she doesn't have enough." He paused, looking toward the back of the room. There sat Ellie, clutching her teddy bear, her innocent face lit up by the soft glow of the overhead lights. "A reminder of why he fought so hard." As he continued, he shared moments of joy alongside the struggles: Ellie's antics during bath time, her off-key renditions of nursery songs, and her unwavering belief that sparkles could float on the ceiling. Laughter erupted through the crowd, and Chris felt warmth pulse through him. It was a reminder that hope could thrive even in the bleakest circumstances. "I've found kindness in unexpected places," he whispered, the emotion thickening his voice. "And I've learned that it's okay to accept help. It doesn't make me weaker, it makes us all stronger." He glanced around, watching reactions play out. He sought out Mr. Jenkins, whose smile beamed like a lighthouse guiding his ship through the storm. When Chris finished, a wave of applause washed over him. It wasn't just a sound. It was acceptance and understanding woven through a fabric of compassion. Tales of their own hardships began to emerge: stories of job loss, trials in raising children, and the unexpected challenges life threw. They embraced each other, sharing not just words, but burdens, allowing healing to flow between them all. Feeling lighter than he had in days, Chris stepped off the stage. He could feel Ellie's little arms wrap around him, her soft voice breaking the heavy silence. "Daddy, you were so brave." Her eyes sparkled, and for a moment, he forgot about everything else. But as people began to file out, smiles on their faces, another kind of weight settled on Chris's heart. It dawned on him that accepting help was the first step towards something larger, a communal safety net woven with understanding, support, and shared responsibilities. Suddenly, he caught sight of a small flyer on the community bulletin board as he moved toward the exits. It read, "New job opportunities for those in need, community job skills training starting next week." A flame flickered in his heart. Maybe this was the sign he had been waiting for. But what would that mean for him, for Ellie? As excitement bubbled alongside fear, Chris realized he was at a crossroads. Would he step into the unknown and take a chance? Would this be the turning point his life desperately needed? He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Mr. Jenkins. "You did good, son. Now, are you ready for what's next?" That question hung in the air like a promise. It had been a long road, but the journey was far from over. Would Chris have the courage to move forward? Chris stood in the school parking lot, the flyer clenched in his hand as if it were a lifeline. The sun was sinking low, casting a warm golden hue across the rows of cars. Ellie's laughter danced like notes in the air, her small figure running ahead, seemingly unaware of the burden her father carried. "Daddy, look!" she called, her voice ringing out. She was crouched by a cluster of wildflowers bursting through the cracks in the pavement. "Can we pick some for Mommy? She'd love them." Chris's heart swelled, and a smile broke through the tension lining his face. "Of course, sweetheart," he replied, moving towards her. As he knelt beside her, he felt the warmth of her excitement seep into him. Together, they gathered the flowers, those little bursts of color against the gray concrete instantly brightening the moment. Chris watched Ellie's fingers move delicately, her face scrunching in determination. Each flower picked reminded him of the small joys he needed to cling to in this season of uncertainty. "Why do we pick flowers, Daddy?" she asked, pausing to look up at him, her big eyes sparkling like the stars that would soon emerge in the night sky. to bring beauty into our lives, just like you bring beauty into mine," he said, his voice soft. He noticed how her innocent wisdom made the world feel lighter, filling the cracks of his heart. As they finished gathering, they walked hand in hand toward their car. The moment of laughter and joy lingered, but shadows of worry crept back into Chris's mind. The flyer offered a glimmer of hope, but doubt whispered loudly. Would he be able to balance a new job with time for Ellie and all the other responsibilities that loomed in front of him? That night, after putting Ellie to bed, Chris sat at the kitchen table, the flyer spread out before him. He stared at it, heart thumping, questions swirling. Should he really leap into the unknown? What if he failed? What if he couldn't learn the skills or manage the time? Chris, please, he murmured to himself, shaking his head. You can't always think like this. You've got to try. He drummed his fingers on the table, pushing aside the fear that tried to take root. He replayed the words he had spoken earlier that night. Accepting help doesn't make you weaker. Maybe it was finally time to put that into practice. His thoughts shifted back to Mr. Jenkins and the genuine pride he had felt in his mentor's words. With renewed determination, Chris pulled out his phone and hesitated briefly before dialing. He had business cards from the job fair, and now the anxiety transformed into a flicker of courage. Hey, is this the job training program? He asked when someone picked up. Absolutely. We're so excited about your interest, the voice chirped on the other end, sending a rush of adrenaline through Chris. While he listened, questions fluttered in his mind. This was going to change things for him and Ellie. A sense of purpose ignited. But would he have the stamina to endure the training? Would he truly be able to create a new future? The call ended, leaving Chris breathless at the possibilities ahead. He glanced toward the bedroom door where Ellie slept, and his heart surged with fierce determination. Tomorrow, he would take that first step. But could he truly chase the dream of a better life while tearing down the barriers built by fear? With thoughts racing, Chris made his decision, knowing that whatever came next would be a monumental test. In that moment of resolution, he understood the journey wasn't just about him. It was about Ellie, about hope. As dawn approached, he lay in bed, excitement mixing with fear reiterated in his mind. What if I choose wrong? He thought, the questions echoing. But one sentiment stood firm among the turmoil. What if I choose right? A soft buzz from his phone broke the silence, a notification that made his heart race anew. What awaited him in the morning? Chris awoke to the soft rays of sunlight filtering through the window, casting playful patterns across his bedroom. He lay still for a moment, listening to the gentle hum of the morning outside. The sound of birds chirping, the distant rumble of traffic, and the muffled laughter of children playing made the world seem alive. It tugged at him, pulling him from thoughts of hesitation and doubt. He sat up suddenly, glancing at his phone. A single notification sat at the top of the screen, and Chris felt a surge of curiosity mixed with apprehension. With a deep breath, he reached for it, scrolling quickly to see what awaited him. It was a message from someone in the training program, confirming a meeting time for later that day. There it was, a tangible opportunity, and yet it only stoked the fire of his anxiety. Could he really commit himself to this? Today would be the day he had to make some real decisions, but the looming questions felt heavier as he got dressed. After pouring a quick bowl of cereal for Ellie, he urged himself to push his worries aside. Today is the day, right? Just take it step by step, he whispered to himself, gathering strength from the thought. As he watched Ellie munch on her cereal, her face lit up with innocence and joy. She was completely absorbed in a story she was sharing about her drawing from school, a vibrant adventure featuring a rainbow unicorn and a dragon. Her excitement made Chris smile, but also reminded him why he felt so compelled to make changes. "Daddy, are we going to the park today?" she asked, eyes wide with anticipation. Maybe after I finish some important stuff, he replied, trying to sound upbeat. How about we finish breakfast, and then we can talk about it? After breakfast, Chris took a moment to gather his thoughts. He needed to be there for Ellie and give her the best life he could, but the fear of failure gnawed at him. What if I'm not enough? He thought briefly before shaking his head, dismissing the thought with purpose. He needed to focus. With Ellie engaged in her toys, Chris grabbed a notebook and pen, his lifeline in a chaotic world. He wrote down every doubt, fear, and hope that crossed his mind. Then he flipped the page and started listing all the reasons to take this leap of faith. Better job, more time for Ellie, a brighter future. He felt a little lighter as he scribbled, the paper almost crumpling under the weight of his thoughts. It was a release. With one last glance at the clock, Chris knew it was time to face the unknown. He looked towards Ellie, who was now trying to balance a stuffed animal on her head, giggling when it fell. The sound filled him with warmth. I'm doing this for you, kiddo, he thought with a renewed sense of purpose. Let us get ready for my meeting, he called, and Ellie's eyes lit up. Can I come? She asked, bouncing slightly on her chair. The innocence in her voice made him smile, revealing the powerful bond they shared. Not this time, but we'll have an adventure later, Chris promised, leaving Ellie reluctantly accepting this answer. As he walked out of the house, Chris felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The morning was fresh, and the world looked vibrant through his hopeful lens. He walked toward his car, returning to the flyer in his hand, his reminder of the chance for change. It felt real now. Driving through the streets, the anxiety built. What if he wasn't ready? What if he failed? But another thought pushed back. He wouldn't know unless he tried. Arriving at the training center, he stood outside for a moment, feeling the weight of his decision. Okay, Chris, he whispered to himself, you can do this. But just as he turned to walk inside, a sudden commotion caught his attention. A little girl, no older than Ellie, was standing alone, tears streaming down her face. Chris hesitated, looking back at his own daughter back in the car. Hey, Ellie, just a second, he said to himself, feeling an overwhelming urge to help. This wasn't in his plan, but something deep inside sparked. Everything okay? He called to the girl, moving closer, his heart pounding with a different kind of urgency now. Little did he know, this moment might just change everything for both of them. What had he stepped into? Chris stepped closer, kneeling down to the girl's level. She looked up at him, her wide eyes glistening with tears. I can't find my mom, she sniffled, clutching a tattered teddy bear that looked almost as sad as she did. His heart stirred with empathy. Hey, it's okay. Can you tell me your name? He asked gently. Lucy, she whimpered, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Lucy, I'm Chris. We'll find your mom, okay? Let us take a deep breath together. He demonstrated, inhaling deeply until his chest expanded, then exhaling slowly. Lucy mirrored his actions, and for a brief moment, the panic seemed to fade from her face. Can you remember where you last saw her? He probed, hoping to calm her down. By the big fountain, she replied, her little voice trembling. All right, Chris said softly, rising up. Let's go check there together. He held out his hand, and after a pause, Lucy took it, her small fingers wrapping around his. The warmth of her grip gave him a sense of purpose that made the weight on his shoulders a little lighter. As they walked, Chris couldn't shake the feeling that he was supposed to be somewhere else. He glanced back at his car, where Ellie waited impatiently. But Lucy needed him. It felt right. Do you like rainbows? Chris asked, trying to distract her. Yeah. They're pretty, she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. Well, I bet you will see one today. If we find your mom, that could be our reward. He smiled, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. Together, they reached the fountain, its water sparkling in the midday sun. Chris looked around, searching for any sign of Lucy's mother. "Do you see her anywhere?" he asked. Lucy scanned the area, scanning faces with a growing sense of hope. "There!" she shouted suddenly, pointing toward a woman frantically calling her name across the plaza. Before he knew it, Chris was moving quickly, Lucy in tow. As they approached, he could see relief flood over the woman's face. "Lucy!" she cried, rushing over and enveloping her in a tight embrace. Chris stepped back, feeling a rush of satisfaction wash over him. He'd done it, he had helped someone in need. "Thank you," the woman said breathlessly, glancing at Chris. "My phone died, and I couldn't call anyone. I was so scared." Chris shrugged, the joy of the connection filling his heart. "Just glad she is safe." When Lucy looked back at him, her face split into a tear-stained grin. "You're like a superhero." He chuckled gently, feeling a swell of warmth in his chest. Just doing what anyone would do. But as he turned to walk away, the weight of his meeting suddenly crashed back down on him. He had to make a choice. The urgent pull to face his fears and dive headfirst into his own future fought against the call of comforting Ellie, who was his first responsibility. With every step back toward his car, Chris felt the mix of relief for Lucy, yet trepidation about his own dreams. Suddenly, a thought struck him. What if he could be a superhero, not just for Lucy but for Ellie too? Once in the car, Ellie leaped out of her seat, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, you found a new friend?" "Something like that," he smiled. But the revelation nagged at him. "Can we go to the park now?" she asked again, bouncing eagerly. "Yeah, kiddo, the park it is." But first Chris's mind raced. Would he be brave enough to tell Ellie about his plan? "Remember how we talked about adventures?" he started, his heart pounding as he looked into her innocent eyes. "What we just did felt like one too, right?" Ellie's face lit up. "Yeah, it was amazing." "Then, how about we have one more adventure together?" he proposed, drawing in a deep breath. As he drove, excitement and fear wove their way through him. In that moment, he realized this might be the start of their biggest adventure yet, just the two of them. But would he follow through this time? Would he be bold enough to transform their lives or let doubt creep back in? The car hummed softly as Chris navigated through the bustling streets. Ellie chattered about their next adventure with a contagious excitement that made him smile. Her enthusiasm was like a lifeline. It pulled him away from the swirling doubts in his mind. "Daddy, can we find a swing first? I want to go really high," she squealed, her tiny hands waving animatedly. "Sure thing, champ. Let us see who can swing the highest, you or me," he replied, feeling a warm spread in his chest. The park was just ahead, a place filled with laughter and the innocent joy of childhood. It was a safe haven for both Ellie and him. Away from the heavy thoughts pressing down on his heart. As they parked and made their way to the entrance, Chris couldn't shake the sense of urgency pulsing through him. This simple act of going to the park was more than just a day out. It felt like a fresh start. He wanted to show Ellie that life held endless possibilities, that they could chase dreams together. Inside the park, Ellie dashed toward the swings, her laughter like music. Chris leaned against the wooden post, watching her soar back and forth through the air. Each giggle seemed to echo his own hope, lifting his spirits with every swing. "Bet you can't go higher than me," he teased, running to the adjacent swing and joining her. They swung side by side, competing to touch the cloud-dotted sky. "Look at us, Daddy. We're flying," Ellie shouted, her joy radiating like sunlight. "Yeah, we're superheroes." He laughed, feeling the gravity of his worries lift, if only for a moment. After a flurry of swings and slides, they found a quiet spot under a sprawling oak tree. Chris pulled out a small picnic blanket he had packed, and Ellie plopped down, her energy suddenly replaced by curiosity. "Daddy, What is the adventure you were talking about?" she asked, her big eyes searching his face. Chris took a deep breath, contemplating how to share his dreams with her. "Well, sweetie, I was thinking maybe we could turn our adventures into something more. Like, we could go to new places, or even help people, just like I helped Lucy today." Ellie tilted her head. "Like superheroes?" she said with wonder. "Exactly. Just like superheroes. But it's a bit more complicated than that. I need to figure out how to help us, you know?" Ellie frowned for a moment. "But helping people is awesome. Why is it complicated?" He found himself pausing. Life was intricate: bills, responsibilities, fears of failing. "Well, sometimes it's hard to know if I'm doing the right thing. I want to make sure we're safe and happy, but I also want to chase my dreams. Can't we do both?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. Her innocence pierced through his thoughts, reminding him of the dreams he once had and the warmth that came with pursuing what mattered to him. "Maybe we can," he said, hope fluttering in his chest. "Maybe we'll go on some adventures together that help us discover new things." Ellie clapped her hands, her enthusiasm renewed. "Yes! Like looking for treasures or saving baby animals." "Exactly, treasure hunting and saving the world one adventure at a time." As Chris watched her smile, he felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. Every time he saw Ellie happy, he saw a reflection of his own heartbeat alive with potential. But with that determination came fear: the fear of failure, of taking steps that could lead to unpredictability. Just as he was warming to his thoughts, a commotion broke the peace. A group of kids nearby had gathered around something on the ground, their laughter replaced by shouts of surprise. "What is happening over there?" Ellie asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "I don't know, but let us check it out," Chris replied, rising to his feet. As they walked closer, his heart raced, fear and anticipation mixing in his chest. What they were about to discover could shift everything again. And for better or worse, they were ready for whatever adventure awaited them next. What was at the center of the crowd? As they approached the gathering, Chris could feel a buzz of energy in the air. Laughter and shouts of surprise collided, creating a tapestry of sounds that pulled him in. Ellie clutched his hand tightly, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of new possibilities. "What do you think it is?" she asked, bouncing on her toes, her curiosity burning bright. "I'm not sure, but let us find out," he said. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. What if it were something magical or unexpected? They wove through other parents and children, finally pushing through the last barrier of bodies. What lay before them took Chris by surprise. A few kids stood with wide eyes, peering down at something nestled in the grass. "Look!" a boy exclaimed, pointing. "It's a baby bird." Ellie gasped, her eyes growing even wider. "Oh no! Is it hurt?" Chris directed his gaze downward. There in the grass was a tiny, fluffy chick, its feathers ruffled and its eyes blinking. It chirped weakly, clearly in distress. Chris felt a quick surge of protectiveness for the fragile creature, a pang in his heart resonating with the innocence of the moment. "Poor thing," he murmured, kneeling down beside Ellie. "What do you think we should do?" Ellie's brow furrowed in concentration. "We have to help it. What if its mommy can't find it?" He nodded, impressed by her thoughtfulness. "You're right. We should find a way to keep it safe." He looked around at the other kids. "Is anyone here able to help? We might need a box or something to keep it cozy." A girl immediately stepped forward with a shoebox in her hands. "I brought this. We could put it inside so it doesn't get stepped on." "Perfect." Chris smiled at her. "Thank you so much." With gentle hands, they scooped the little bird into the box, using some soft leaves from the grass to make a bed. Chris felt a weight lift just by doing something good, even for such a small creature. "Now what?" Ellie asked, her voice low and serious, like a mini superhero contemplating the next move in their quest. Well, we need to find its nest or someone who can help take care of it, he said, looking around the park as if it might reveal the answer. Maybe we can ask the park ranger? Ellie's face lit up. Yes. Let us be heroes for the baby bird. In that instant, Chris felt a rush of pride. Here they were, united in this moment, taking steps not just into an adventure, but into a role that felt bigger than them, both helping, caring, being champions for those who couldn't speak for themselves. As they began walking away from the crowd, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Hey! That's so cool what you're doing. A father stepped forward, his face bright and friendly. I'm a volunteer with the wildlife rescue. If you bring that little one to the ranger station, they can help. Chris's heart warmed at the man's eagerness to support their mission. See, Ellie? Just like we talked about helping others and chasing dreams. Yeah. She cheered, her voice ringing pure as a bell. They turned to start toward the ranger station, but a sudden realization gripped Chris. The world was filled with small struggles just waiting to be met with kindness. It was up to him to show Ellie how to embrace not only adventures, but also the significance of compassion. Yet, as they weaved through the park, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their journey was about to become even more layered and perhaps chaotic. What else would unfold before them? Because amid the chirps of the fragile bird and the connection blossoming between father and daughter, life had a way of testing resilience when you least expected it. What new challenges would they encounter along the way? As they made their way towards the ranger station, the sun peeked through the treetops, casting dappled shadows on the path ahead. Chris could feel Ellie's excitement humming in the air as they walked, her fingers trembling against his as she bounced along beside him. Do you think the ranger will know where to take it? She asked, her voice full of wonder. He smiled at her enthusiasm. I hope so. There are people who care about animals just like we do. They all know just what to do. Their strides picked up, motivated by Ellie's unyielding optimism. Yet, with every step, Chris couldn't ignore the flicker of unease whispering in the back of his mind. Was he really equipped to teach his daughter everything about compassion and safety? What if he made a mistake? Suddenly, the peaceful afternoon was disrupted by a commotion a little further down the path. Voices rose above the chatter of the crowd, mingling sadness and urgency. Chris's heart sank. He glanced at Ellie, whose eyes had widened at the abrupt change in atmosphere. What is happening? She asked, her innocent curiosity colliding with concern. I don't know. Let us go see. As they approached, the source became painfully clear. A mother stood with her child, tears glistening in her eyes. The little boy was clutching a toy that had been ripped in two, his face scrunched up in confusion and hurt. Chris instinctively felt a surge of empathy for the mother. He had been there before, grappling with a child's heartache, left helpless. Why did she do it? It's my favorite, he cried, the whimper breaking his mother's resolve even more. No, sweetheart. It's okay. I'll fix it, she said, trying to muster a comforting smile as she wiped away her tears. Ellie tugged Chris's hand. That little boy needs help too. Can we do something? We could, Chris replied. But it might feel like a lot with everything else happening right now. Maybe we could offer them a solution? She suggested, her eyes glinting with determination. Chris watched as she stepped closer to the boy, who seemed lost in his frustration. Hey, Ellie said gently, kneeling beside him. I'm Ellie. What is your name? Tommy, the boy muttered, still staring at his broken toy. Tommy, she echoed, her voice like a soothing balm. Would you like some help? Slowly, he nodded, letting the weight of emotion show through his tiny frame. Chris felt pride swell in his chest, but also fear. Would this be too much for Ellie? The add-on to an already overwhelming day? I can help too, he said, kneeling down beside them. "Let us see what we can do together." In that moment, Chris realized how profound and humbling it was to witness Ellie not only recognize another child as struggle, but to actively want to bridge the gap with compassion. It made him reflect on his role as a father and leader. Perhaps it was more about showing Ellie the heart of humanity rather than the technicalities of care.as they tried to piece the broken toy back together. Even with sticky tape and careful hands, the boy's initial sadness turned to a smile as he saw his favorite toy being resurrected. The mom looked on, her hurt easing ever so slightly, gratitude spilling over in soft, thankful words. Then, just as they shared this small victory, Chris felt a tug at his heart again. What if their good deed today didn't just end with a bird? What if they met a challenge that would truly stretch their understanding of empathy? As the laughter of the children swirled around them, he caught a glimpse of something new on the horizon, something bigger than a bird, a toy, or even a park full of families. Maybe tomorrow would bring an unexpected revelation that would test the very limits of their kindness, what lay beyond the next bend in the park, waiting to put their compassion to the ultimate test. After the emotional moment with Tommy, Chris stood up, feeling a warmth in his heart. Ellie had a way of brightening even the cloudiest of days, but he sensed that their adventure was far from over. The park felt alive, the rustling leaves whispering secrets of the day ahead. "Let us keep moving," he suggested, still buzzing with the electricity of helping another child. Ellie nodded enthusiastically, pulling at his hand to hurry him along. The trail wound further into the forest, each step echoing with the gentle crunch of leaves underfoot. Chris admired how the sun filtered through the branches, illuminating patches of wildflowers swaying in the light breeze. It was beautiful, but a nagging worry clouded his mind. What did tomorrow hold? Were they truly ready for it? A few steps later, the sound of running water reached their ears. "Listen!" Ellie exclaimed, letting go of his hand to dash towards the brook that bubbled playfully nearby. He watched her, feeling a mix of joy and protectiveness swirl within him. She laughed, her little feet splashing in the shallow stream. God, how he loved seeing her so happy. As Chris approached, he noticed a group of children gathered by the bank, their voices layered with laughter and shouts. "Look at the fish!" "Wow!" Ellie joined them, her excitement infectious. He stood back for a moment, observing her mingling with the others. It reminded him of his own childhood days spent exploring carefree, completely unaware of the world beyond the joy of play. But then, his heart dropped. A boy, roughly Ellie's age, suddenly slipped on a wet rock and toppled into the water. His laughter cut off as screams of surprise rang out. Without thinking, Chris leapt forward, his instincts kicking in. The boy flailed, gasping for air, desperation written all over his face. "Someone help!" cried out a girl near the edge of the bank. Ellie's wide eyes met Chris's, the innocent thrill of play replaced by wide-eyed worry. "Dad, we have to help him." "I know, sweetie." "Stay back," he shouted as he raced to the edge of the brook. His heart pounded against his ribcage like a drum, felt in every fiber of his being. Without hesitation, he plunged into the cold water. It was frigid, making his breath hitch, but the urgency of the situation pressed him forward. The boy's head bobbed near the surface, panic swirling all around them. With a strong stroke, Chris reached him just in time, grabbing the boy's arm and pulling him to the shallows. He quickly steadied him, shouting to the others, "Get back! Give him space!" The boy sputtered and coughed, water spraying, but at least he was safe now. Ellie knelt beside them, her small hands gripping her dad's arm. "Is he okay?" she asked, wide-eyed with worry. Chris's chest tightened at her worry, realizing that this experience was about to teach her something new, something intense. "Just breathe, buddy. You're all right now," he soothed, giving the child a reassuring pat on the back. Other parents from the park rushed over, alarmed whispers filling the air. The boy, now catching his breath, looked up at Chris, gratitude replacing fear in his gaze. "Thank you," he managed to stammer, his face still pale but eyes brightening. Chris's mind raced. He had made it in time, but questions flooded his thoughts. Could he navigate this newfound rush of emotions while raising a daughter who absorbed everything around her? "Ellie," he said softly, turning to face her, "sometimes being brave means helping others, even when it's scary." She nodded, understanding washing over her. But before they could digest the events that had just transpired, a hushed gasp cut through the crowd. "What is happening over there?" Chris looked up, heart racing, as several people pointed toward the edge of the park. Something was happening that demanded their attention and likely would challenge everything they had just experienced together. What awaited on the horizon was more than just a moment. It felt like the edge of a new chapter. What had they stumbled upon now, and how would it call upon their hearts? Chris stood in the shallows, water dripping off him, heart racing as he realized the potential dangers that lay just ahead. The murmurs in the crowd began to settle, their curiosity shifting toward the scene unfolding a little further away. Fear coiled in his stomach. Whatever it was, he felt compelled to protect Ellie from it. "Let us go check it out," he said, intertwining his fingers with Ellie's as they stepped cautiously out of the water. Feeling the weight of the moment, he whispered, "You okay, kiddo?" "Yeah, Daddy." "Just, what is it?" Her brow furrowed with concern, her innocent eyes searching his for reassurance. As they walked closer, Chris felt his heart pounding. The mix of tension and anxiety filtered through the gathered crowd. When they finally broke through the barrier of bodies, the scene revealed a horrible sight. A child had fallen from a bike on the asphalt and was lying on the ground, clutching his leg while his mother kneeled beside him. Her face was pale, panic etched across her features. "Mommy!" the boy cried, tears streaming down his cherubic cheeks. Without thinking, Chris dropped to the ground next to them, Ellie still holding tightly onto his side. "What happened?" he asked, urgent and direct, hoping to help everyone focus. I think he might have broken his leg," the mother exclaimed, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." Chris realized he had to keep his composure, stay calm for Ellie and the others. "Hey, listen," he said softly, "stay with him. Keep talking to him. I'll get some assistance." In that moment, he remembered the park ranger and volunteers that had been around, the same ones Ellie and he had interacted with. "Stay right here," he said to Ellie, exchanging quick eye contact that conveyed reassurance. "Please be careful," she whispered, tightening her grip on his hand before he released it. Chris sprang into action, cutting through the crowd and searching for help. He spotted a park ranger nearby, motioning for her attention with both urgency and determination. "There has been an accident. A boy fell and might have broken his leg." "Got it," she explained, pulling out her walkie-talkie and relaying the information while simultaneously moving towards the incident. Chris turned around to look back at Ellie, who had positioned herself beside the fallen boy, murmuring words of comfort. He reached for her hand again, grateful for her instinct to help without fear. Moments later, first responders arrived, and Chris watched as they worked diligently to assist the injured child. The gentle manner with which they reassured the boy struck a chord deep within him. It reminded him of the power that comes from helping others. As the scene unfolded, Chris crouched beside Ellie, who had been so brave through all this. "You were really great back there," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got a heart full of kindness." Ellie's eyes sparkled, and for a moment, Chris could see how she was absorbing everything around her, the pain, the empathy, the strength required to be good in hard times. "It felt good to help, Daddy," she replied, her voice small but radiant. Soon, the boy was stabilized and attended to with care, surrounded by his mother. The atmosphere slowly began to shift from shock to relief as smiles broke out amidst the crowd. Finally, everything settled into a sense of togetherness in the face of uncertainty. Chris felt a wave of pride surge inside him, seeing how communities naturally come together to support one another in times of need. The idea that they could share these moments, that each adventure, big or small, formed a bond that defined them as a family. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts. "Excuse me," the park ranger addressed him, walking over. "You and Ellie did really well. Thanks for your help and quick thinking." Chris felt a blush creep over him. "I just did what felt right," he shrugged, humility washing over him. A flicker of realization struck. He was part of something larger. It wasn't just about finding work or accomplishing his dreams anymore. It was about family, community, and weaving their stories together, hand in hand. As they stood together, Chris squeezed Ellie's hand tightly, hoping that she felt the strength and heart that surrounded them. "As long as we're side by side, we can take on anything," he whispered, drawing Ellie close. Together, they turned their gaze upon the lively park, vibrant and full of life, a canvas unfolding new chapters that would stretch far beyond their imaginations. "Ready for our next adventure, kiddo?" Chris asked, the realization surrounding him like a warm hug. "Always, Daddy." She cheered, and with that, they set off into an unknown future, hearts full and arms wide open, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited them next. For the first time in many months, Chris felt unburdened. Together, they were superheroes, ready to write the next chapter of their lives, creating ripples of kindness, laughter, and love. Now this is a moment of clarity. If Chris could embrace the fears within him and channel that into love and support for Ellie, thus passing on the importance of compassion, then surely anyone could. Do you feel that spark? Now is the time to make a change, to chase your own adventures. Don't wait not even one more second. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you don't miss exclusive stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like right now to help fuel the algorithm, and support the amazing content that brings us together. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation and step into their own lives filled with courage and hope. This is the moment to show your support. Join us on this incredible journey.